So I think one of the interesting things is that people always look at WAR as this way of evaluating a player and sort of putting together their contributions towards winning baseball. But one of my biggest issues with WAR is, even though as somebody that cites it all the time, I have no idea how it works.
Or how it's calculated, right? What the ratios are, right. Because there's a lot of factors that go into...
There's a ton of different factors that go into it. And so I think that while it's a great statistic, you don't exactly know what's going into creating it. So, yeah, okay, Mike Trout has been worth 8 WAR every season, but what exactly makes up that 8 WAR? Right.
I mean, the idea is obviously to boil down a player's entire contribution to one number. So that's cool. But I think it's hard like you're saying, for the average fan to understand it. And so I was fooling around with it and started thinking about, well, what's a good measure of a player's offensive effectiveness? And I came up with total bases.
Yeah, I think total bases is interesting. It's very straightforward.
So single times 1, double times 2, triple times 3, home run times 4. That's how you calculate total bases.
Right, exactly. It's if you get a double, you get 2 bases. If you get a triple, you get 3. Pretty self-explanatory.
So, and the greatest players in Major League history will show up on a list of total base totals of all time because they played a long time and they were great. So, of course, you're going to see, them near the top of the list.
But if you're just looking at total bases, it tends to reward certain things. It rewards
longevity,
guys that played a lot of seasons more than anything else, because you have to get a lot of plate appearances to get a lot of total bases.
To your point, Pete Rose is number 9 on the all-time list of total bases, and he's a guy that didn't hit home runs and only hit doubles and singles for the greatest singles hitter in history.
He had 15,000 plate appearances.
Yeah, 15,000, almost 16,000 plate appearances.
Right, and he had 5,752 total bases. Babe Ruth, who's one spot ahead of Pete Rose, has 5,793 total bases, but he did that in only 10,600 plate appearances.
That's 2/3 of the plate appearances.
So that's a significant difference in terms of how quickly they were able to accumulate those total bases.
Right, and the fact that power hitters are supremely favored, in total base calculations, obviously.
But guys, if you're a guy, Luis Arias would still have a lot more total bases than a lot of guys this season because he just gets a lot more hits than them.
Right, but he's right in that sense, but it's going to be harder. I mean, Ty Cobb is number 6 on the all-time list. He was a singles hitter, right? He led the league in home runs one year, though, I should say, with 9.
Right. And so I think what's interesting is, so if you look at total bases, it's going to favor certain eras of players, because pretty much any guy from the dead ball era is going to struggle to be on this list.
There were exactly 0 players in the top 330 total base all time from before 1920.
Right, because
0.
You were playing a game where you hit singles, and you now have to compete against guys that hit, if you hit 60 home runs in a year, that's 240 total bases just right there.
So I wrote an article on Substack. You can find it. It says, if war is hell, if war is hell, could there be one baseball stat to rule them all? And so, the idea is total bases per plate appearance a stat that could rule them all? No, but it's a stat the average fan can calculate easily, as opposed to what you said about war.
Right, and you could this just gives you a general idea, because it's going to take into account similar things. If a guy's reaching on a walk, he's still getting a total base. He gets 1 for that. So this could be a useful thing for sort of just drilling down quickly to look at an offensive player's overall contribution to offense without the messiness of OPS, where it's like, okay, well, the guy's got a 800 OPS. Well, is he like a 400 on base guy with a 400 slugging, or is he a
300, 500 guy?
300, 500 guy, which is very different.
So what I like doing is looking at a list, and I put this in the article, going, okay, if you go down the top list of total base, it's like a Hall of Fame list.
Unsurprisingly,
Hank Aaron is number 1. Pujols is number 2, which kind of surprised me, actually, that he was that high up. Stan Musial, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds. We mentioned Ty Cobb is in there. A-Rod is number 7. Babe Ruth, you mentioned 8. Pete Rose, 9. Carl Yastrzemski, 10. I mean, everybody's a Hall of Famer, except for guys that aren't allowed to be Hall of Famers.
22 years or more.
Right? And you got to get all the way down to Lou Gehrig, who's number 20 on the list, who only played 17 years, tragically.
Which might make
tells you how good he is.
Right, tells you how impressive he is.
So you look at those guys, but then when you start trying to measure, okay, well, how do they look if you were to take the total bases they got by the plate appearances, which you were talking about before?
Right. And this is where it gets interesting because it helps kind of take away, it helps even it out so that the guys that just played a lot and then sort of stat accumulated, especially at the end of their career, they're not getting benefits for that as much because you're kind of knocking them down for being like, okay, yeah, you got an extra 400 total bases at the end of your career, but you did that over a ton of at-bats, so that would lower your per plate appearance ranking.
So it actually probably will be, and we'll get to this, about teams, because adding the team together sort of takes about the individuality of one player's contribution and says, how good is that team?
Right, and having that team, so that'll tell you is every time that team sent up a player to the plate, they would have this percentage chance of having him get a base.
This many total bases, right.
And it gets impressive because you have some teams that, no team approaches a .5 rating.
Well, one team this year's getting there, but we'll talk about that.
They're not there yet.
No. And they're not going to get there.
But there are players, Babe Ruth averaged .54 total bases per plate.
The highest in Major League history.
And
isn't it great that Babe Ruth is at the top of a list like that? I just love that.
And just to make sense of it, basically what that means is every time Babe Ruth stepped to the base, he had a 50% chance of basically
54% chance.
54% chance of getting to first base.
Right. Getting a base, right.
Getting a base. Somehow, some way. That's wild when you think about it.
And his teammate and guy who batted behind him in the order, Lou Gehrig, is right behind him here in this list at number 2 all time at .523 total bases for plate appearance. And there are a few guys at over .5, including Jimmy Fox. So there basically are only 3 that I could find that had the amount of at-bats that these guys had. And the rest of the list is made up with guys like Manny Ramirez, Rogers Hornsby at .496, Vlad Guerrero at .497.
I think it's interesting that Vladimir Guerrero shows up so strongly on this when you account for per plate appearance, and that's what's nice about doing this is it helps kind of reward the guys that maybe just didn't play the same number of seasons as some of these other guys.
Right, and Vlad played less seasons than everybody on the list, to your point. He only played 16.
Right.
Ted Williams is on the list above him at 19 seasons. He had .499 almost. He's just falling. Just should have got the .5. Sure. I mean, come on, Ted. Stan Musial at .482. Willie Mays at .484. And Manny Ramirez at .493, I think.
I think that's what's interesting. But I think, as you said, the more interesting application for this might be for teams overall. And sort of looking at that, because when you look at it on a single season basis, it's really hard to kind of derive anything for an individual player because it's subjective to the individual year. And it's prone to noise and stuff. But when you look at a team, looking at their total bases per plate appearance for the season is really going to tell you what that offense looked like for that team that year.
And so as we kind of teased out, nobody is .5 on a team basis in the history of Major League Baseball for the entire season, right? So I thought the greatest team, I was going to find was going to be the 27 Yankees, right? They're the 27 Yankees. Shouldn't they be
greatest lineup that's ever been?
Number one. Well, the Yankees are on the list, but the 27 Yankees are not in the top 20, I don't think.
They're 21st.
They're 21st. So, and that was a great hitting team. So there are 20 teams above them, and we thought we'd talk a little about those teams because they're all very interesting to talk about.
What's interesting is that when you look at these teams and when you're evaluating them by this metric, you're seeing overwhelmingly more modern teams. And I think that's for a couple reasons. One, teams overall just hit more home runs today, and hitting home runs is a really good thing for this statistic. You get 4 bases for a home run. That's pretty valuable for getting your total bases per plate appearance up.
You know what I saw in some of my research this week? So the player that has the record for most total bases in a game is a guy that played for our Mets at one point, but this wasn't when he was with the Mets. The number is 19.
4 home runs and a triple?
4 home runs, a double, and a single.
Okay.
That's a day.
That's a day.
Shawn Green.
Huh.
Shawn Green has I think somebody else might have tied that record. Did you get an idea? 19 total bases is a crazy game. So let's just go in reverse order and talk about these teams because it's fun to talk about the teams. So the 27 Yankees were down there, we said at 21. The 2021 Toronto Blue Jays are next.
And that was an impressive.
Wow.
And so what you're going to see with these teams, and the reason why I think you're seeing so many of these more modern teams is, like we said, teams hit more home runs today, but you also don't have weak hitters in these lineups. Look at that Toronto Blue Jays lineup from 2021. Top to bottom, everybody on that team could hit and hit for power. You don't have these weak hitting shortstops, or like you did even in the American League up until what was it, 74? You don't have a pitcher in the line.
73, yeah. So, and that's such a great point, because if you look at the list as we go through it, think about it when we're talking about it. It's all American League teams with the DH, or 2 teams or 3 teams from 1930, the greatest offensive year in Major League history.
And then there's one team at the top.
And then the Rockies. And the Rockies are in there a few times because they play in a bandbox and the ball goes a million miles. So there's no other teams, right, that can come into that. And I think that's really interesting. So the Blue Jays surprised me because I knew that was a good hitting team, but to be near the top like that, I'm surprised. The 96 Mariners are next.
Not surprising given the level of firepower. I think that was A-Rod's rookie season. They still had Ken Griffey and Edgar Martinez on that team. So that's a pretty star-studded lineup right there.
And the 97 Mariners were better. They're higher up on the list, but those back-to-back teams were very good. After the Mariners, again, the 2000 Blue Jays. So that's interesting to me because I wouldn't have.
I'm sure if we looked at that team, because I think, was Olerud back on them by 2000? I can't remember.
I don't think so. He was.
Was he still with the Mets?
Yeah, I think he was still with the Mets actually at that point. So and so that I wouldn't have thought that team I would have been near the top like that.
Right.
The 1930 Cubs. We talk about the greatest offensive year. That was Hack Wilson's 56 home runs and 191 RBIs. So you have
3 teams that are floating around from that 1930 period.
Then the 97 Colorado Rockies. Not a surprise that we see the Rockies. They'll be back. The 2003 Atlanta Braves, and I guess that was in Turner Field, before where they are now. And that team didn't win the World Series, didn't even go to the World Series. So I'm trying to think, who were the hitters on the 2003 Braves?
That was Andrew
Besides
Jones?
Chipper Jones, by the way. Yes, Andrew Jones, Chipper Jones, the Jones boys. Brian McCann.
Was that when Teixeira was a Brave?
I think you might be right. Very good, very good. That's a good call. So they're up there pretty high, higher than you would think. The 1936 Yankees, which was the first of 4 consecutive World Series winning teams in 1936. I think there was a guy named DiMaggio and Gehrig on that team. Babe Ruth was already gone by then. And then
no-name players right there.
No-name players. The 2005 Texas Rangers. 2005. So those aren't the World Series teams.
No.
They had a guy named Juan Gonzalez on that team, I believe. By then, was he gone already? No, he's gone by then. So Josh Hamilton?
That was the Michael Young team.
Well, Michael Young was a singles and doubles hitter.
Yeah,
so
but he had a couple really
good years where he hit for high average.
That would have been Josh Hamilton.
Yeah,
A-Rod was a Yankee by that point.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the team. I'm just trying to think in my mind, what made them so good. So Ivan Rodriguez was there at that time. So, yes,
was he? I thought he would have been a national at that point.
No, he was after. That was after the Marlins. So 99, did I say?
You said 05.
05, yeah. That was after he came from the Marlins.
Okay.
It came from there. So we mentioned the 97 Seattle Mariners, the 1930 New York Giants, and there's another, there's this 1930 year, which, you had great players on that team, Bill Terry and I think Mel Ott was on that team as well. And then how about the next is the 2017 Houston Astros.
One of the best teams. Really, if they did not have that cloud over them, people would talk about them in a different way.
And you knew that team could hit,
right?
And they come in the top 10 all time for seasons at 4.427. The 2001 Rockies. So we had the 2000 Rockies, the 99 Rockies, the 2001 Rockies.
And a bunch of those teams could really hit.
They were mashers.
No pitching. I think even Mike Hampton contributed a lot.
He probably hit home runs for them at that time. The 2003 Boston Red Sox, which is interesting because that is not the team that won the World Series. It was the year before. But that was a really good hitting team, .336. Also at .33 was the 2019 Houston Astros.
Right, which tells you how good those late 2010 Astro teams were.
Well, 2019, that was only...
Well, 2017, 2019,
2018,
2018, I think they were hurt a bunch that year.
Right. The Red Sox won in 18. But, that's why the Astros, when it gets to the playoffs, even, without Correa, as we've seen them do last year, now, that's a tough team.
I will say, though, the fact that The number 2, 3, and 4 teams on this list were all 2019.
Oh, you noticed that,
League
did you?
Teams. I think that led some credence to the whole idea that just maybe the ball might have been a little juiced that year.
That's right. You have, in fact, and we'll get to this in a moment, the top 4 teams all time in terms of total bases per plate appearance by the team have all been recorded in the last 4 years.
Right, because in number 3, you have the 2019 Yankees.
That was a mashing team.
And then a mashing team that people, I think, don't realize was a mashing team was the 2019 Twins.
I mean, I knew they could hit.
Because they were the other team before this year. Atlanta
With all the home runs, right.
With the third, I think having 7 guys or 6 guys with 30
home
runs.
runs. Yeah.
They had that as well, with Eddie Rosario, interestingly, being a common link between both of those teams. But they're number 2 to Eddie Rosario's current team, the 2023 Braves.
It's this year, so I'm so shocked that I kind of invented. I came up with this way of measuring. And by the way, you can't do this in Baseball Reference yet. Maybe we'll ask those guys if maybe they put that in there, because I think it's an interesting way to evaluate possibly the greatest hitting team by what people are talking about of all time is the 2023 Braves, and they are having the greatest season by a fair margin.
Right, because the Minnesota Twins come in at .443 plate bases
which is much better than the 19 Yankees were .437. So there's a big difference. But then the
Braves this year are at .449, almost .45.
Right.
So they have a significant gap between them and the second place Twins, which is really just showing what another level this is, which is, even aided because there are things that aren't being taken into account. So Acuna's 70 stolen bases don't factor into this number at all.
Right.
So that shows you just how crazy that offense is, where they're not only getting on base at an elite level, but they're stealing them like crazy.
And so it's not a perfect stat. In the article that I wrote, I came up because I always like to look at this with Chet Lemon and Harold Baines.
Yeah.
So Chet Lemon, you may be no idea. Okay, very good center fielder for the Tigers. I'm trying to think where else he played. I'll think of it in a moment. And he had, a good hitter, a career WAR of like 55.
Yeah.
He played the same amount of seasons as Harold Baines, who has a career WAR of 38. And you think so, and then total bases per plate appearance, he's about 6% Chet Lemon better than Harold Baines, overall, that's a significant number.
Especially because you would say Chet Lemon was a much better defensive player than Harold Baines.
Yes.
So that's the difference almost between, you're like, okay, yeah, there is the difference there. So it does play out well.
But that goes to, I don't think anybody would be arguing that Chet Lemon should be a Hall of Famer, even though he had a much better career when you look at it, 55 WAR, 55.8 WAR, or something like that.
Well, if we're arguing for a big haul, we might.
But, well, yes, you're right. And so that at Harold Baines, who we're saying, okay, he's the questionable guy we all talk about, would you think that either one of them are Hall of Famers on the basis of,
and just because I know
TB
people would be
appearance.
interested in this, if you're looking at this on an individual basis, .45, interestingly, is the cutoff for a career. If you're above .45 for your career, you're in like the
total
top,
bases per plate appearance.
Total bases per plate appearance. You're in like the top 20 of players all time. That's where the truly
career-wise
reside.
But in any individual season, you can be much higher than that.
I think Shohei had was
5.45 this year.
Right.
Babe Ruth had an over 6
one season. That was the highest.
That's the highest of all time.
Bonds had a couple high fives in there.
Right. But, Shohei had an amazing, season when you look at it from that standpoint, and probably the reason he's, another reason why he's the American League MVP, because he hasn't played in a while, and he still has the lead. He's still got more home runs than everybody and he's going to win the home run title, and he's done. So
the only thing that this doesn't, you might argue that, this doesn't favor the singles hitter as well, but we interestingly did look at Arias using this, and he actually came out pretty well.
Better than I thought.
Better than you'd think, because yes, single guys are hurt by this on a career basis, but not in an individual season.
And there's no crown for this in a year or for the career.
But this is going to kind of help okay, how good is this? What is this guy actually contributing? Because I'm sure if you'll have some guys in here that you think, he hits 30 home runs in a season, but then you look at his total bases per plate appearance and you're like, he's not actually doing a whole lot.
Right. I think the seasons you think would be great,
are
great, right?
But there's some guys you wouldn't expect to show out well on this, like Luis Gonzalez being essentially a top 10 player.
He had 419 total bases in 2001, Luis Gonzalez. I had no idea that, he would stack up on the list of these players, by the way, which include mostly Hall of Famers again.
He's kind of the only guy that sticks out on the list in a single season.
Right. You get all the way down to Todd Helton, who's number 26. So, and this year, for total bases, it makes sense. The most total bases is Acuna, right, in the National League.
You look at the teams on here, it's all Atlanta Braves, LA Dodgers, and Mariners. Really, the only guys that stick out on here as sort of being out of place are, interestingly, Bobby Witt Jr., and a guy that probably does not get talked enough about for how good he is on the Chicago White Sox,
say this,
and Luis Robert.
Yeah.
He is unbelievable, and he's having an amazing season for a team that is just down bad in the worst way.
And I he's a player, by the way, that you kind of think, could we steal a guy like that? Maybe the White Sox are like, yeah, it's not working out with Luis Robert.
I'll
Maybe
give you a lightly used Mark Vientos for him.
So basically, when you're looking at evaluating players and you're tired of looking at WAR, we're suggesting you try using total bases per plate appearance. And please, folks, write in and try this yourself and see how it works, and tell us if you've got another stat that we're not coming up with.
We'd love to hear if you look at guys historically or currently. We think it's just a great way to be able to kind of quickly get an idea of how somebody's doing, just because you don't need a whole lot of math to get there. It's real simple.
Exactly. Everybody can do this.